Alright everyone, this is the History of Video Games Lesson 5, The Rise of Atari, and a familiar name, Nolan Bushnell. So for your right for discussion, right from last lesson, why did Bushnell's computer space fail? Okay, pause the video, give me some response here, and I look forward to reading your submissions when you hand in your work. Resume the video when you're ready. Nolan admits that computer space was a failure. The instructions were way too difficult. He stated that no one wanted to read an encyclopedia to figure out how to play a video game. Their manufacturer, Nutting Associates, was on the brink of bankruptcy, and the production of computer space did not help. This inspired Bushnell to create his own company. In some ways, it was a blessing to have worked for Nutting. It didn't take long to figure out I couldn't possibly screw things up more than these guys had. Seeing their mistakes gave me a lot of confidence in my ability to do better. On my own. Nolan forms a three-way partnership with Ted Dabney, his partner in computer space, an Ampex engineer who helped him build computer space, and Larry Bryan, also from Ampex. Each partner contributes $250. But Larry Bryan ends up dropping out before handing in his money. Bushnell and Dabney look through a dictionary to find a name, and prior to Bryan quitting, he comes up with the name syzygy. Syzygy is a word describing a straight line configuration of three celestial bodies. Best image to explain it is the sun, the moon, and the earth are in line with each other. Three celestial bodies in a straight line. And when the sun, the moon, and the earth all line up together like that, that's a solar eclipse. So a solar eclipse is a syzygy. Okay. When they applied for the name, it was already taken by a candle company. So they have to reconfigure their strategy here. Bushnell turned to a Japanese strategy game called Go. And this is it right here. He chose the rough equivalent of the word check and named his company Atari. Within 10 years of starting the company, Atari would grow into a $2 billion a year entertainment giant. Their very first office, though, was located in Santa Clara. Bally was their first customer, and they hired Atari to make extra-wide pinball machines. However, Bushnell never gave up on computer space. He would continually work on it to make a multiplayer version of the game. A little side project for Bushnell, who just couldn't let it go. The very first full-time employee at Atari was this woman right here, and her name was Cynthia Villanueva. She was a 17-year-old who actually babysat Bushnell's children. She needed a summer job, so Bushnell hires her as the receptionist. He instructed her to put on the show, which meant to give callers an impression that Atari was an established organization rather than a startup company. Nolan didn't want to answer the phone. He wanted to have somebody else answer it, so he hired secretary Cynthia, and when someone would call, she would make them wait and yell, "It's for you, Nolan." Nolan would wait even longer to make it sound like it was a bigger company. You know, it would take longer to go get him. So he would sit in his office, leave these people on hold, and pretend he was busy. They wanted to give the impression that they were a large, successful company. Villanueva's responsibilities weren't just on the phone. She was actually called upon to run errands, build electronic components, and place parts in the cabinets of these games. She worked for them for a decade. Atari's second employee was a young engineer whom Ted Dabney met while working at Ampex, and his name is Al Alcorn. That's this guy right here. Alcorn had just finished a work-study program that allowed him to work summers at Ampex while finishing his engineering degree at Cal Berkeley. Alcorn was once a member of the same all-city high school football team as this guy right here, O.J. Simpson. So he's very well-rounded, athletic, okay, smart, he's an engineer. Some fun facts there. Alcorn was naturally gifted at electronics and had learned to repair televisions in high school. He paid for all of his college by working in a repair shop for televisions. Alcorn finished his degree and worked for Ampex until he was laid off. Bushnell immediately offers him a job. So here's Alcorn talking about that job offer experience. He offered me $1,000 a month and a chance to own stock in the company. The stock was worthless at the time. Most startup companies fail anyways. I had actually been making more money, but I figured, what the heck? Nolan had a company car. This was a concept I'd never thought of before. It was an Oldsmobile station wagon. But like, wow, you can drive a car that isn't even yours and you don't have to pay for it. What a concept. So he accepts less money, stock in a company whose value is worthless at the moment, but he joins them because they had a company car that any employee could use. He thought that was incredible. Shortly after hiring Alcorn, Bushnell gave him his first project. Bushnell revealed that he had just signed a contract with GE to design a home electronic game based on ping pong. The game should be very simple to play. One ball, two paddles, and a score. Nothing else on the screen. Bushnell made up the entire story. There was no contract with GE. He was just testing Alcorn to get him familiar with the process of making games. So he's literally testing out his new employee to see if he can handle the style of this job. I found out later this was simply an exercise that Nolan gave me because it was the simplest game he could think of. He didn't think it had any value. He believed the next winning game was going to be something more complex than computer space, not simpler. Alcorn creates his own design. As he added enhancements that Bushnell never had envisioned before. He used cheaper, better working parts, added an English concept to spinning the ball when you hit it with the paddle in a certain way, and Alcorn devised the paddles where if the ball hit the middle, it would go straight. The top of the paddle, it would go up. The bottom half, it would go down. The top and bottom half would hit the ball at a 45-degree angle. Alcorn also added ball acceleration. The more hits between the two paddles in a single point, the faster the ball would move. Alcorn also added sound to the game accidentally. And a lot of people say, well, how could he have added sound accidentally? Here I was developing this thing and feeling kind of frustrated because it already had too many working parts to be a successful consumer product, meaning it cost too much to put together. So I felt like I was failing because Nolan didn't mention the game was better than expected. The truth is I was running out of parts on the board, and Nolan wanted the roar of a crowd of thousands, an approving roar when you score a point, and he also wanted a boo or a hiss when you lost a point. I said, screw it, I don't know how to make any of those sounds. I don't have enough parts anyhow. Since I had the wire wrapped on the scope, I poked around the sync generator to find an appropriate frequency or tone. So those sounds were done in half a day. They were the sounds that were already made in the machine. It took Alcorn 3 months to build a working prototype. He finished the project surprising both Bushnell and Dabney. Bushnell named the game Pong. To test the game, it was placed in Andy Capp's Tavern. Andy Capp's Tavern was a peanut shell on the floor beer bar in Sunnyvale, California. It was nothing special other than it had a game room in the back that was larger than any you would see in a bar at this time. 2 days after installing Pong in Andy Capp's Tavern, Alcorn gets an angry late-night call from Bill Gaddis, who is the tavern's manager. They want them to drive over in the middle of the night and haul the game out of the bar because it stopped working. The game didn't stop working, though. It was just jammed with overflowing quarters because it was so popular. Here's some images of Andy Capp's Tavern. There's that back gaming room they were talking about. And now it's called Rooster T. Feathers in the modern day. Surprised by the success, Bushnell decided that he could manufacture the game himself rather than sell it to a game maker. Pong went mainstream, but Magnavox came knocking, Ralph Baer's company. They sued Atari, claiming that Pong was too similar to their own tennis game that we've seen videos on in previous lessons. Lawyers would have cost Atari $1.5 million to fight the lawsuit, which they didn't have. However, Bushnell is a great negotiator and twisted Magnavox into accepting a deal. Atari would pay Magnavox $700,000 for a license to the Pong concept. They could still sell Pong and profit, but only had to pay some royalties to Magnavox. The companies go their separate ways, but years later, Ralph Baer bumps into Bushnell at a consumer electronics show, which we'll talk about when we get there. Bushnell introduced Baer to the large group at the show, and he called him the father of video games. Baer simply smiled and said, "I wish you would have said that to the press back in the day." All right, so if you want to watch the original, go ahead and visit this link here. Feel free to type it into your search bar. Or if you want to try Pong yourself, you could type this in and give it a go. Thanks for watching.